and it has been doing so for longer than the human lineage has existed. McKay warned that if you broke through to this lake and released the pressure, the water would fizz violently, like a shaken soda can being opened. When Russians finally breached the lake in 2012, water shot 363 meters up the borehole. In 2015, it surged over 500 meters, far more than any model had predicted. Something down there was pressurized beyond anyone's calculations, and it had been building for a very long time. The first signs of life in total darkness. In 1999, two separate research teams published simultaneous papers in the journal Science. Both had analyzed accretion ice, the layer of refrozen lake water that clings to the underside of the glacier directly above the lake. And both found the same thing: life. John Priscu at Montana State University detected between 2,800 and 36,000 microbial cells per milliliter of ice. David Carl at the University of Hawaii found 200 to 300 cells per milliliter and confirmed they were metabolically active. These were not fossils. These were not dormant remnants. These organisms were alive, sealed inside ice that had formed from water untouched by sunlight for millions of years. The organisms did not use photosynthesis. They could not. No photon of light has ever penetrated to Lake Vostok. Instead, they derived energy from chemicals in the surrounding rocks. They were chemolithotrophs, creatures that eat minerals. Brent Christner, then at Ohio State University, identified specific bacterial lineages, including Brachybacteria, Methylobacterium, and Paenobacillus, a spore-forming bacterium capable of surviving extreme dormancy for potentially thousands of years. Christner later estimated that the lake water itself could contain between 100,000 and 1 million bacterial cells per milliliter. That is an entire ecosystem running on nothing but geology. No sun, no photosynthesis, no connection to anything on the surface. Just water, rock, heat from the Earth's core, and time. An unimaginable amount of time. Consider what this means. Every ecosystem you have ever seen runs on the sun. Forests, oceans, grasslands, coral reefs. The entire chain begins with sunlight captured by plants or algae. Remove the sun and everything collapses, but not here. Lake Vostok's organisms have built a food web from scratch, using nothing but the planet itself. They have been running this parallel experiment in biology for at least 15 million years, completely independent of the world we know. To put that timeline in perspective, the entire genus Homo, every human species that has ever existed, appeared roughly 2.5 million years ago. Lake Vostok's organisms have had 6 times longer than that to evolve. 6 times the entire span of human evolution, uninterrupted, in conditions that exist nowhere else on Earth. And the 1999 findings were only the beginning. Thousands of species where none should exist. On July 3, 2013, Scott Rogers and his team at Bowling Green State University published a study in PLOS ONE that should have been front-page news around the world. Using advanced DNA and RNA sequencing techniques on accretion ice samples, they identified 3,507 unique gene sequences. Of those, 1,623 could be classified. What they found was not a handful of tough bacteria clinging to survival. It was an entirely hidden world. 94% of the sequences were bacterial. 6% were eukaryotic, mostly fungi. But within those numbers were organisms that had no business existing in the same body of water. Psychrophiles, organisms adapted to extreme cold, were found alongside thermophiles, organisms that thrive in heat. The presence of thermophiles strongly suggests that hydrothermal vents are active on the lake floor, creating zones of warmth in the freezing darkness. Two radically different temperature environments coexisting in a single sealed lake, each hosting its own community of life. They found DNA from deep-sea organisms, yellow-green and red algae, water fleas, crustaceans, sea anemones. Bacteria typically found in the digestive systems of fish and annelid worms. Over 100 sequences came from multicellular eukaryotes. A 2020 follow-up study even found DNA closest to Antarctic rock cod, suggesting that a fish might inhabit this sunless, sealed lake. But the detail that quietly disturbed researchers most was the coexistence of marine and freshwater species in the same water. This only makes sense if Lake Vostok was once connected to the ocean. Roughly 35 million years ago, before Antarctica froze, this lake basin was likely an open marine bay. Palm trees grew along Antarctica's coasts. The continent was still part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, and winter temperatures never dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere sat above 990 parts per million. Antarctica was lush and green and warm. Then the land shifted, the Southern Ocean's circumpolar current formed around 30 million years ago, temperatures plummeted, and ice sealed the bay shut. Marine organisms were trapped inside, cut off from the ocean, locked in darkness for tens of millions of years. Scientists also discovered a massive magnetic anomaly near the southeastern shore of the lake. It stretches 105 kilometers long by 75 kilometers wide and registers over 1,000 nanoteslas, which is far stronger than the surrounding bedrock. Some researchers attribute it to crustal thinning beneath the lake, where Earth's mantle sits closer to the surface than it should. Others have not fully explained it. The anomaly remains one of several features of Lake Vostok that do not fit neatly into existing geological models. When Darwin studied the finches of the Galapagos Islands, those birds had been isolated for roughly 2 to 3 million years. In that time, they diverged into 13 distinct species with radically different beaks, diets, and behaviors. Lake Vostok has been sealed for at least 5 times longer than that, in conditions that bear no resemblance to any surface environment, under selection pressures that scientists cannot fully model because they have never encountered them before. Rogers estimated the lake could harbor up to 3,500 distinct species. And then there was the discovery that no one talks about enough. Sergei Bulat of the Petersburg Nuclear Physics Institute found a bacterial phylotype labeled W12310. It was only 86% genetically similar to any known species on Earth. Bulat later stated that if he had revealed the DNA sequence without disclosing its origin, scientists would have asked whether it came from this planet at all. That is not a tabloid quote. That came from a researcher at a nuclear physics institute, published in peer-reviewed proceedings. An organism so genetically distant from everything else in our biological databases that its planetary origin was openly questioned. Let that settle for a moment, because that organism was not found at the bottom of the lake. It was found near the ceiling, in the outermost layer of refrozen water. The race to reach the water without destroying it. The Russians had been drilling toward Lake Vostok for more than 20 years. It was the longest and deepest ice drilling project in history. The borehole reached 3,769 meters. To keep the hole from collapsing under the pressure, the team used 60 tons of kerosene and freon as drilling fluid. This created a devastating paradox. The most pristine environment on Earth was being accessed through a column of industrial chemicals. Environmental organizations called the project profoundly misguided. The Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition warned that contamination was inevitable.
Scientists around the world debated whether reaching the lake was worth the risk of permanently destroying what they were trying to study. Under the Madrid Protocol, any activity in Antarctica requires an environmental impact assessment. Russia submitted one and concluded the impact would be insignificant. Not everyone agreed. On February 5, 2012, at 8:25 p.m. Moscow time, the drill finally broke through. Water under immense pressure rushed upward, rising 363 meters before freezing solid inside the borehole. The team argued this created a clean ice plug that prevented chemicals from contaminating the lake. The following season, they returned, drilled into that frozen plug, and extracted 32 meters of ice core from the refrozen water. But when they analyzed the samples, 255 contaminant species were identified. The drilling fluid had mixed with the water at a ratio of roughly 1:1. Every genuine organism was swimming in a soup of kerosene contamination. A second breakthrough occurred on January 25, 2015, when water surged over 500 meters up the borehole, far exceeding the predicted 30 to 40 meters. The frozen samples showed microdroplets of drilling fluid throughout, giving the ice a milky, clouded appearance. Russia suspended operations in October 2015 due to insufficient funding. The most ambitious deep drilling project in history stalled, leaving the deepest questions unanswered. Meanwhile, American scientists showed there was a better way. At Lake Whillans on January 28, 2013, a team used a clean hot water drill that filtered 99.9% of bacteria and UV sterilized the water before it touched the ice. They punched through 800 meters and retrieved the first truly uncontaminated samples from any Antarctic subglacial lake. They discovered more than 3,900 kinds of microbial life running entirely on chemosynthesis, bacteria eating rocks and oxidizing ammonia from ancient sediments. In 2018, the SALSA project accessed Mercer Subglacial Lake through 1,087 meters of ice. A Korean research team later analyzed genomes from subglacial lake samples and found that most organisms belonged to previously unknown species, genetically distinct from anything living on the surface. NASA watched all of this unfold in enormous interest, but not because of what it means for Antarctica, because of what it means for a moon orbiting Jupiter, 628 million kilometers away. What Lake Vostok means for life beyond Earth.
Ocean estimated at 100 kilometers deep, holding 2 to 3 times the volume of all Earth's oceans combined. It sits beneath an ice shell roughly 29 kilometers thick. Surface temperatures average minus 160 degrees Celsius, but at the boundary where ice meets water, the temperature is estimated at roughly minus 3 degrees Celsius, the same temperature as Lake Vostok. Saturn's moon Enceladus has a subsurface ocean beneath 20 to 25 kilometers of ice. NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected geysers erupting through cracks near the South Pole, carrying water vapor, ice particles, simple organic molecules, salts, silica nanoparticles, and molecular hydrogen. The silica requires water temperatures exceeding 90 degrees Celsius to interact with rock. That is direct evidence of active hydrothermal venting on the floor of an alien ocean, the same kind of venting that the thermophilic organisms in Lake Vostok suggest is happening right now beneath Antarctica. The argument is devastatingly simple. If life can persist for 15 million years in a sealed, sunless, pressurized lake beneath 4 kilometers of ice, powered by nothing but minerals and geothermal heat, surviving in water saturated with 50 times the normal oxygen levels, then the oceans of Europa and Enceladus are not hostile environments, they are habitable ones, and habitable does not mean empty. The European Space Agency launched JUICE in April 2023, heading for Jupiter's icy moons. It will arrive in July 2031. An Enceladus dedicated mission has been proposed for a launch around 2040. The search has already begun, And the reason it began is because of a lake in Antarctica that nobody believed existed until 30 years ago. NASA launched the Europa Clipper on October 14, 2024, aboard a SpaceX Falcon Heavy. It will arrive at Jupiter in April 2030 and perform 49 close flybys of Europa, carrying ice-penetrating radar designed to measure the thickness of the ice shell for the first time. That single measurement will determine whether it is physically possible to send a probe through the ice. Engineers are already building those probes. Valkyrie, an ice-melting robot that uses a 5-kilowatt laser to bore through glaciers. They tested it in Alaska, reaching over 30 meters in depth. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory built Brewie, a buoyant two-wheeled rover that floats upward and rolls along the underside of ice, designed to explore exactly the zone where life is most likely to concentrate. In Antarctica, the Deep Cine submersible was deployed through 740 meters of ice and discovered fish and invertebrates in a subglacial environment that nobody knew existed. Georgia Tech's IceFin robot explored beneath the Thwaites Glacier in 2020. A German team built Ice Mole, a probe that melts through ice while maintaining completely sterile conditions, and tested it at Blood Falls in Antarctica. NASA even designed a concept called SWIM, a swarm of 48 tiny robots, each the size of a cell phone, that would be released beneath the ice of Europa to spread out and search for life. Every one of these technologies traces its purpose back to what Lake Vostok taught us. Every one of them is being designed for another world. But here's the thing that stays with you when the science is done and the papers are filed and the conferences are over. Everything we have found so far, every one of the 3,507 gene sequences, the thermophiles, the psychrophiles, the marine relics from 35 million years ago, the organism that did not match anything on this planet, all of it came from the outermost edge, from refrozen water, from the shallowest layer of accretion ice clinging to the underside of the glacier. We have never sampled the actual lake floor. Nobody has reached the 2,600-foot deep southern basin. Nobody has examined the 70 meters of sediment sitting on the lake bed, which may contain climate records stretching back 30 million years. Nobody has visited the suspected hydrothermal vents, where thermophilic organisms suggest warmth is rising from the Earth's mantle. Nobody has explored the ridge or the island. The true depths of Lake Vostok, where conditions are warmest, where nutrients are richest, where millions of years of isolated evolution has had the most material to work with, remain completely untouched. Every discovery so far has come from the shallowest possible layer. We scraped the ceiling of this lake and found an organism that a nuclear physicist said did not look like it came from Earth. We haven't even begun to look at the floor. And whatever has been growing down there, in total darkness, under 4 kilometers of ice, in water that would kill most known life forms, has had 15 million years to evolve into something. We don't know what that something is. We have no frame of reference for what 15 million years of isolated evolution in a chemically hostile, sunless, pressurized environment produces. We have no model for it, no precedent. Every comparison we can draw falls short because nothing like this has ever been studied before. Russia has built a brand new research station at Vostok. It's a 133-module complex that was ceremonially opened by President Putin on January 28, 2024. It can house 15 people through the winter and 35 during summer operations. The borehole is still there. The lake is still sealed, and the question of what lives in its deepest waters remains completely open. Think about this one last thing. The ice core pulled from above Lake Vostok contains a climate record stretching back 422,766 years. It shows that atmospheric carbon dioxide levels during that entire period fluctuated between 180 and 280 parts per million. They never exceeded 300. The current level is above 420. We are living in conditions that have no precedent in nearly 500,000 years of recorded climate history. The ice is telling us something, so is the lake beneath it, and we're only just beginning to listen. It's still down there right now, in the dark, doing whatever it's been doing since before our species existed, waiting for no one, needing nothing from us, completely unaware that we are even here.
Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And be honest with me. Does it sit right with you that something has been evolving alone beneath 4 kilometers of ice for 15 million years, and we still have absolutely no idea what it has become?